I've come across this quite a few times, and I'm genuinely puzzled by it. I'm talking about a peculiar antipathy towards stem mastering.
If your mastering engineer is requesting stems and won't master a regular stereo 2-track, fire them and get someone else.
To be clear, we're talking about sending your mastering engineer multiple separated stems instead of a single stereo file, giving him or her more processing options and more control over the final result. I don't want to pick on Colt specifically. I've heard the same sentiment expressed in slightly more temperate terms by Ian Shepherd of Production Advice and others. Here's the basic objection in a nutshell, as far as I understand it. If you need to send stems, it means your mix wasn't finished. Well, yes. To be clear, I don't routinely ask for stems when mastering. If I do request stems, that means I think the mix has issues that I can't address by processing a stereo file. Of course, I'll try to be as diplomatic as possible when feeding that back to the client. However, it doesn't mean I think the mix sucks completely. If that was the case, I'd be recommending a whole new mix. If I request stems, that means I think the mix is mostly there, but is being marred by an issue or two that I can't fudge over with typical mastering processing. So what would you have me do in that case? I could master the stereo file as best I can and put out a release with a flawed mix. Or I could reject the mix and tell them to go back and fix the issues, perhaps with specific suggestions regarding EQ frequencies or techniques to try. But typing that into an email would probably take longer than just fixing it myself. Or I could say, just render the mix again, but without the snare drum, for example, and send me that part as a separate stem. That was the issue with this mix from Ill Tribe. It was basically fine, except the snare didn't knock like it needed to. It was easy to fix with some parallel processing. But I'm going to keep that secret for now. It's way too powerful and important a technique, and I'm going to save it till I can do it justice. So, while I might typically charge a bit more to process a mix of stems instead of doing a traditional mastering job, it's still way less than I'd charge to do a full new mix. And why bother with that if the existing mix is 95% there already? There's a particular type of client that this approach often works well with, and it's a type that's becoming more common, if anything. Musicians who have diversified into doing their own recording and production, either for creative reasons or due to budget restrictions. Guitarists and keyboard players are often quite comfortable with effects such as reverb, delay, or tone-shaping EQ. Musicians that have experience requesting monitor mix adjustments on stage are often quite adept at setting a good basic balance between instruments. But if you've not specifically studied audio engineering, a parametric EQ or a compressor will probably be a mystery. I often find mixes from these types of producers have issues with clashing frequencies or mid-range build-ups of energy, and they lack the punch and coherence that comes from good use of compression. Some suitable stem processing can be transformational in that case. I can EQ the kick and bass around each other, compress the drums to give them the punch and power they need, make sure the vocal has enough space, all in about 1/10 of the time that a full mix would require. Why would you not do that? And it seems that Colt basically agrees with me if we watch a little more of his video.
Stem mastering is not mastering. Stem mastering is mixing. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay somebody to do this for you. I'm not saying that you shouldn't send your stems to someone and have them finish your mix for you. But you should not do it under the assumption that this is mastering, because it's not. You're paying somebody to finish your mix.
So basically, his only objection is calling it mastering. But I don't call it mastering. I call it stem mastering, specifically to distinguish it from normal stereo mastering. Feel free to come up with a better name if you like. But if that's your only objection, then I'm afraid it's just a type of snobbery. I don't need stem mastering because I get my mixes right in the first place. Well, okay. But by that criteria, if your mastering engineer uses multiband compression, you've also failed as a mixing engineer. Which is obviously just silly. This is a creative endeavour. There's no right or wrong. Whatever gives you the result you want is fine. If your mastering engineer requests stems before hearing the mixes, that perhaps should ring warning bells. But I can't imagine there are many that do that, as it's just making extra work for yourself if it's not necessary. Again, don't take this as an attack on Colt Caparoon. I don't think we really disagree on anything beyond semantics. Then he gives other advice in the same video that I would happily endorse. Basically what I'm saying is, if you trust your mastering engineer, give them stems if they request them. You'll probably get a better result. And if you don't trust your mastering engineer, why did you hire him? That's all. Thanks for watching.